Hi, this is Deborah Clutter. I want to talk to you about uh, rescuing vintage quilt tops. So I know a lot of people buy vintage quilt tops and they like to have them quilted, or they hand quilt them, or whatever they're going to do. But I feel like it's a valuable service. I mean, somebody put some time to make these things, and it's nice to uh, have a finished product. So I'm going to show you some of the ones that I have already done. Excuse my dog. Freckles, get down. Had to remove my dog off the bed. So the first quilt I'm going to talk about, this one is, I consider this one a vintage quilt, even though it's one of my very own quilts. I mean, I actually made this, but I started this when I was in my 30s. I'm almost 60, so it was a long time ago, and I did hand piece this quilt, and it wasn't done exactly great. This was actually one of the first quilts I put on my long arm. I used to have a handy quilter, and yeah, it was quite challenging because it was not square, and I had a lot of problems. I thought I was never going to get through this thing. Made a lot of mistakes quilting it, and made mistakes trying to square it, made mistakes putting the border on. I mean, this was, 13 years ago, so yeah. But this is a grandma's flower garden, and I did hand piece it, like I said. And it's just a small quilt, and I use it mostly for, just laying around on the couch or something. So this quilt top I bought off of eBay, and this is a beautiful cross stitch quilt top, and I could not believe it when I got it. It is so beautiful and so nicely done. I couldn't believe the lady sold it. She said it was her mother's, and I decided to just do a overall edge to edge, my dog's back, edge to edge quilting design on this, and I think it turned out beautiful. I did stitch over the cross stitch, and this looks much better if you stitch over the cross stitch instead of trying to outline the cross stitch and not stitch over it. Doesn't look good. I'll show you an example in a minute. But this quilt is done. It has a brown flannel back and kind of a scrappy border with the colors of the quilt. Absolutely love this one. One of my favorites. So this next one, I bought this quilt top in Belle Fourche, which is a small town in South Dakota, about an hour from where I live. It's actually closer to the Wyoming border. And I bought this for $30 at the antique store. This thing is not well pieced. It looks like it was made out of shirt material, maybe. But I thought it would be a nice little quilt. I just did an all-over design on it again. Has like a flower motif, but it looks beautiful. It looks beautiful now. You would not know that this thing was not pieced well. I mean, it looks pretty dang good. And I like this one. It makes a nice little throw quilt. So I don't know. I think it might be 30s, 40s. Who knows? So this one is my absolute favorite. I bought this top off of eBay again. It did come exactly like you see it with the sashing. I did replace the sashing on this. I had to put this in a retro clean for a couple of days to get it nice and white. the stashing wasn't complete. It was a little bit of a mess, so I did use the same color sashing that she originally had in this quilt, and it's exactly the same as it was, except for it is new material in the sashing. So I took it all apart after and cleaned it, and then I squared up all the blocks and cut new sashing and sewed it all back together. This quilt has a scallop border, and I don't know if you can see it, but this is a like a beaded piping on here that I hand did. It took me forever. So this piping is really beautiful on this quilt. And I think the quilting I did on this quilt looks absolutely wonderful. I did free motion quilt all of the squares. They're all different. And then it has a piano key with feathers on the border. Love this quilt. This is the back. It's just a green. So even though, if I would have left this as it originally was with the sashing all messed up, it would never have looked this beautiful. And I am all about making a quilt look beautiful. I think if somebody finds one of my old quilt tops, they can do whatever they want and they can make it beautiful if I made a mistake. So I think that's okay. I've done vintage quilt tops before where I had a lady that wanted her daughters to have one of her mother's quilt tops, and she wanted me to quilt it for her. And I had to split the quilt top, and I didn't have enough fabric for the border that was already on there to, you know, make it even after I split it. So I had some fabric hand printed on spoon flower to match the border, and it turned out beautiful. It was the whole quilt, both of the quilts turned out really, really pretty. So this quilt was actually just blocks. So I bought the blocks, and I did not quilt over the hand embroidery on this, and it looks terrible. I mean, you can't really see it in the video, but it does not look as nice and clean as the other one. So I will probably put this one back on the long arm and decide what I'm going to do about these butterflies. I don't like the way that they're all bunchy, and it doesn't look great. So I did put the sashing and the borders on this, and I tried to pick something that was looked kind of like the era it came from. I don't know. I'm not really super happy with this fabric, but it is what it is. So the last completed quilt I'm going to show you is this one that's on the bed. And this thing is huge. It's, I think it's 98 by 92 or something like that. And I bought this quilt top in Missouri, and I bought it for $30. This thing was immaculately pieced. I'd never seen anybody do hand piecing like this before. It's absolutely flat. It was a dream to quilt. I could not believe whoever pieced this thing did a brilliant job. It's absolutely wonderful. Now I did square off the edges on this quilt. So this is the bottom edge that was scalloped, you know, from the hexagons. I did square the whole thing off, and that's about all I did. And it has a muslin back, and the quilting is a variegated thread, and it's kind of a stipple rose, and I think that turned out really, really well. This is my absolute favorite quilt top. I can't believe I got it for $30. Like I said, it's absolutely beautiful, and it sits on this king-size bed, and it looks like a little bit dirty here. I have washed all of these, by the way. I usually put them in the washer and I dry them like any other quilt. If they're a little bit more fragile, I'll probably take a different approach, but that's normally what I do. So I have some other tops that I'm going to be doing that I want to show you also. So I was in Missouri again, and I found this beautiful cross-stitched quilt top that I couldn't believe. I don't remember how much I paid for this. I think I paid $55 or something like that. I added the blue border and this pink border to this quilt top. This was really, really difficult to square up because it's one of those panels that it has the blue marking on it, and then you cross stitch over it. And it was done in 3 pieces, I think. It was nowhere near square. It took me a long time to square this up. But it has this really beautiful border on the side with the roses. So again, when I quilt this, I am going to quilt over the cross stitching because it is going to look a lot better than trying to quilt around this. And from my experience, it looks better to quilt on these things than it does to not quilt on them. And I can't wait to do this one. I don't know if I'm going to do like an edge to edge or if I'm going to try to do it in a custom quilting or whatever. We'll see. I can't wait to do this one though. So this top, I think I bought this one when I was in California, probably in Lake Isabella, somewhere around there. And I did not do anything to this. I haven't washed it. I haven't done anything to it. So cute little stars. I think it'll be cute. I'll probably just, oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's just folded. I'll probably just do an edge to edge on this. I don't know. We'll see. It cracks me up how they put their borders on like this. I thought about taking it out and putting a new one, but I'm going to leave it. Sometimes I'll put a new border on if I have to, especially if the quilt is really out of square. And you are going to see that with the quilt that I have on the long arm right now. It is another vintage rescue, and I did have some problems with that quilt. It has this weird gauzy fabric in it, and it's really stretchy, and somebody put on the borders, and the quilt, I measured it when I got it, and the borders were like 96 on one side, 97 on another, you know, somewhere. It looked like it was square, but it wasn't. It was not square. And the border wasn't finished, so there was like a gap at the bottom on one side. So I took the borders off, and guess what? It's only it was 68 inches by 83 or something like that. So it only had a 2-inch border. I don't know how they stretched it out to, I mean, the fabric is stretchy, so they really stretched it out a lot. If I tried to quilt it like that, it would have been a nightmare. Took the border off, I put a 5-inch border on it, and now it measures 83 by 96, which is surprising with a 5-inch border. So it's been easy to quilt, even though the fabric is a little bit, has a little bit of movement in the middle because it's really stretchy. It still has been great to quilt, so you'll see this. I'll show you the progress on my quilting of the other vintage rescue. Thanks.